Daniel Kretinsky, controlling shareholder and chairman of EP Holdings. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, Irene. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So you first invested in IDS, the parent company of Royal Mail, in May 2020. Why the decision to go now for the whole company, and what will be your top priorities if the deal goes ahead?
As you've said, we've started to invest in 2020, and it was part of our strategic decision of our group to diversify outside of the energy business. And one of the core domains which we have identified as a new future strategic segments for us was really logistics, including or namely last mile. In that part, we had our own experience from the past managing small operations, and we took the decision in 2020 to make a further step and acquire significant minority participations in very relevant European companies. And the most relevant one was IDS, which effectively covered both Royal Mail, hence the UK, and the continent via its presence in GLS. At the same time, we've also built a stake, as you may know, in a Dutch post called Posta now. Since then, in these 4 years, we have closely observed both companies. We have observed the segment. We have improved our understanding of the segment of the companies. And effectively this year, or towards the end of last year, we came to the decision or to the conviction that it is really meaningful to propose this new phase, this additional step, and becoming controlling shareholder of IDS. And the real ground for this conviction is that we believe it will be beneficial to the company. And we believe that if the company will remain listed, it will face some issues which could represent potential future threats. And those issues can be addressed much better in a regime where there is a clear majority controlling shareholder which can endorse the strategy and support the management in the implementation of the strategy that follows the mid and long-term needs of the company.
What is the future for Royal Mail if the deal doesn't go ahead? Can it survive with the current status quo?
Irene, I think it still can, of course, but the risk is much higher. The problem of Royal Mail is one historical and one more recent. The historical one has been the governance struggle that is frankly in Royal Mail since privatization. And the company, because of this governance struggle, was not really able to show sufficient flexibility and adapt to the changing underlying reality. Royal Mail has effectively converted from mainly mail business into mainly parcel business. And the inherent feature of the parcel business is that this is a very competitive business. And Royal Mail is facing a very severe competition from Amazon, from DPD, from Irene, newly also in a smaller scale from Impost and DHL. So really it needs to fight on the market. It needs to be competitive. This is not a fight about, what are the terms for the employees. This is first of all a fight where the Royal Mail is capable of delivering the right services for the right price and hence be competitive and hence preserve market share. If these conditions are not there, clearly the company goes into a deadly spiral world because of the universal service obligation. It needs to keep the UK nationwide coverage. It has a fixed cost base, but it's missing revenues. So one of the problems which I've made a reference to, was this governance struggle, which has been somehow overcome really last year. We have a new ground for the relationship with the union, and hopefully we have both understanding, all stakeholders understanding that the company needs to be more flexible and needs to accept the new reality where parcels are representing majority of the business. So this is the continuing traditional historical problem that has really negatively affected Royal Mail. What we can say also that this kind of difficult situation has been even enhanced by the fact that the rules for universal service obligation in the UK are, if I'm not mistaken, just with the exception of Malta, the most strict and the most rigid in the whole of Europe. So Royal Mail having difficult relationship between the management and the unions, permanent struggle for governance issues and effectively even power games in a way, and this in a context of very rigid regime of the universal service obligation. That has created a huge pressure, and that has created a situation where Royal Mail started to be lagging in some aspects behind the competition. What we have now as a new trend, which puts another layer of pressure on Royal Mail, is also the evolution of the services that are required and needed by the customers in relation to the parcel businesses of Royal Mail. And this is both in terms of range of services, but also in terms of need of new infrastructure, specifically for the out-of-the-home delivery. So we see now that Royal Mail is trying to catch up and be more flexible company, adjust to the change of the underlying reality and become more modern logistic company who understands that this main business is parcels. But at the same time, the parcel business is evolving quickly, the competition is evolving, and Royal Mail needs to invest massively to catch up with the latest trends. Otherwise, it will again lose market share. And the combination of those two trends is relatively challenging. What needs to be done is, on one hand, have a calm framework, long-term relationship, and deliver on the first priority. So change of Royal Mail and kind of the modernization into a flexible logistic company, keeping, of course, all the values from the past and all the good things from the past. But at the same time, it needs to heavily invest in the out-of-the-home infrastructure. The problem of combining those two in a form of listed company comes simply from the fact that the first problem, so the historical struggle and the lack of modernization, has created a lot of instability, or I would say lack of trust on the side of the investors. So investors are very nervous. Any signal about not good performance, not meeting the performance, negative trends is perceived with very high sensitivity, very understandable. So the company, as a listed company, needs to, of course, have trust of the investors, and this leads into a need to deliver permanently good results and deliver Q-to-Q good results. This is unfortunately not very consistent with the need to invest in new infrastructure, where the infrastructure needs to be built immediately. It needs to be built as soon as possible. It needs to be available, but the payback is not immediate. The infrastructure is being built, the utilization rate will ramp up only over time, and this is not something which shows the right payback in next 1, 2, 3, or 4 Qs. This is a very needed decision in the medium or long term, but this is not a decision that will show its results immediately. And as Royal Mail needs to regain the trust of the investors, it's for Royal Mail super difficult to take the decision about the needed investment. And this is something which we believe we can change. And we can change it, by endorsing the strategy, supporting the management to follow long-term or mid to long-term goals on one hand, and we can also support it financially if it is needed. And the investments we are talking about are relatively sizable. I would just put out there a headline number of roughly 400 million sterlings, the value of the needed infrastructure that needs to be deployed. On top of that, you need to also invest money to start operating the infrastructure, and you need to invest money in the adjacent services. So really, we talk about relatively sizable investments. And when we talk about ideas, we need to be mindful that GLS is for the second part. GLS doesn't have, of course, the historical problem, but is also needs the investments and also needs to invest in the out-of-the-home solutions in Europe. So you can almost double the amount. So in a nutshell, IDS stands in a decision that either it will invest more now and have the fruits or benefit from the fruits of those investments in the future, or it will need to hold back. And then there is a very significant likelihood that it will see a downward pressure on its market share, which, especially in the UK, where the model is really not flexible, the model of Royal Mail, by definition, is going to be a real problem. So we think, and this is why we stood up and presented our offer. This is why we think it's really beneficial for Royal Mail and its employees and its customers to go into this kind of new phase of its existence, fully appreciating and frankly feeling a huge pressure of responsibility that would come from controlling shareholdership in a company like Royal Mail with its history and position in the British society. So I am saying this with certain nervousness. I know what kind of immense responsibility it is, and I feel really enormous and very deep respect. But despite, I feel that this is something, and I'm deeply convinced that this is something which is beneficial to Royal Mail, to its future, to its employees, and to its customers.
Daniel, speaking of confidence, this will need the backing of the UK government, and we've seen an increasing intervention in foreign takeovers of key UK assets, most recently the Telegraph newspaper. How are you going to convince government ministers that they should approve this deal?
Of course, the government, as always in the UK, will be super professional and will do its job. We are absolutely open to the scrutiny. We are going to be super transparent, assist, and we firmly hope there are absolutely no reasons why the decision would be negative. But of course, it is not our decision, and we will in any case fully accept the decision. But we truly hope that there is no reason. Allow me to make a comment that we are effectively a loyal investor in the UK for more than 10 years. We have invested sizable amounts in the UK energy assets, both in acquisition of existing assets and modernization and transformation projects of new assets and transformation of the old assets. Allow me to make a reference of 500 million sterling invested in the second largest biomass power plant in the UK. Allow me to mention a massive investments in Northern Ireland, where in a location called Kilroot, we are building Kilroot Energy Park, which decarbonizes Northern Ireland and brings again very sizable investments in many hundreds of millions of euros in total in the place. And this is something which we are doing consistently for more than a decade. On top of that, we are already for 4 years an investor in Royal Mail, which always had a very proper communication with the company, was supporting the company, and hopefully I can say the same also for Sainsbury's. And last but not least, we are a very proud minority shareholders of West Ham United. So what I want to say, we are loyal to the British environment and to Britain. I think we have proven the way we operate. I think we have been always super credible, delivering on our promises, delivering on expectations. And as a group, we are 100% transparent. I'm in the group from the day one. I founded the group, and in terms of transparency of our capital and transparency of our history, I can be probably more confident than almost anybody else. So overall, I think factually, there is really no ground for opposition as long as the idea that Royal Mail can be in foreign ownership is accepted. One more comment. I really want to stress one thing. I know what Royal Mail means for British society and for British history. Being shareholder is not owner in the traditional sense. It's being one of the stakeholders with the responsibility to bring something to the table. So we understand that despite the fact that we could become owner, we are not the one who can decide freely about Royal Mail. We need to fulfill our role, which is compared to standard ownership, limited by the importance and by the tradition. And we fully understand this, and we would always respect the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, you were just mentioning West Ham. Are you planning to increase your stake in the Premier League club?
I don't think it's on the table. First of all, when talking about Premier League, we talk strictly about West Ham, right? My heart is with West Ham, and any other club would never interest me. We are happy with our shareholding, I have to say. I can also say that it is not part of our thinking that we would become a sole controlling shareholder of West Ham. But if there is an opportunity to somehow increase our stake without becoming majority, we would be very open to that, and I would be proud to be able to even tighten the link with the club. But at the same time, I have to say that the cooperation amongst the existing shareholders is very good, and I feel very comfortable in the role in which we are, and very grateful for this role.
Daniel Kretinsky, shareholder and chairman of EP Holdings, thank you very much for joining us today.
Irene, it has been a pleasure. Great talking to you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.